Hi, this is Dr. Sandy again, and here's another video on some sensory processing. Today we're going to talk about the sense of touch, which is tactile. Let's remember that sensory processing is a term we use that refers to the way our nervous system receives messages from the senses and turns them into appropriate motor and behavioral responses. We have 8 senses, but you might have only heard of 5. The sense of touch, sight, hear, taste, or smell. But did you know that there's 3 other senses? The vestibular sense, which is the sense of motion, the proprioceptive sense, which is the sense of where your body is in space, and the sense of interoception. That's the sense of your internal sensations of hunger, thirst, whether you're hot or cold, whether you need to use the restroom. So those are the 8 senses. But today we're going to talk about the tactile sense, or the sense of touch. Okay, so your student who is well regulated in this tactile sense might show some of the following behaviors. They might notice, but not necessarily respond to small changes in touch, wind, or temperature. They're not going to get overly bent out of shape if somebody accidentally brushes up against them, for example. Okay? And they'll understand that it's cold out and they need warm, cold weather clothing. And they'll notice the change of temperature, but not have a problem with changing that response or those clothing. Okay? Their brain will respond to input appropriately. They're not the kids that are aggravated by tags or light touch. They're also not going to be excessively ticklish. So kids that are over-responsive, okay, on the other hand, so not well-regulated, kids that are over-responsive to tactile input. Another term for this is tactile defensive. These are the kids that are going to be the kids who might be afraid or averse of being in a large crowd, possibly because they're worried about getting bumped into, okay? These are the kids that might prefer deep pressure or strong hugs versus light touch, okay? They might respond with emotional intensity or a meltdown or a temper tantrum or a behavioral outburst if they get brushed against in the lines in the hallway or in a classroom, okay? They might have a meltdown with grooming tasks of fingernail trimming or toothbrushing or hairbrushing, okay? They might show a fight or flight sensation with a fight or flight behavior with everyday sensations. The best way I can describe this is many people hate the sound of people scratching their fingernails on a chalkboard, right? So if you're one of those people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Somebody scratches a chalkboard and your whole body tenses up, and it's so severe that I could just walk up to a chalkboard and pretend that I'm going to scratch it, even though I have no intention of really scratching it. And your whole body, you're going to tense up, you're going to scrunch up your face, you're going to lift those shoulders up, you're ready for that terrible sensation. Imagine that feeling with other things like clothing on your skin or things that you feel with your hands. Imagine that. That's what these kids go through. Okay? And some of these kids might walk on their tiptoes as well. Some of these tactile defensive kids might rub off a spot where they're touched. Like you might see them you might touch their hand, for example, and you're going to see them quickly try to rub that spot off. Okay? These kids might fidget with their clothing, probably because it feels funny and it feels yucky on their skin. Okay? These are the kids in class that hate playing with Play-Doh and sand, and they don't like to glue things. They don't like finger painting. They don't like any of that messy play. And like I said before, they might have a negative response to certain clothing. For example, and most of the time they might be sent to school in things that they like because their parent already knows that they don't like certain textures. But let's say you're doing an art activity and you need them to wear an art smock, and they have a frustration or a behavioral response to that. It could be because of the texture or how it feels against their neck or their shoulders or what have you. Okay? These kids might get upset if their clothes get messy or wet. These are the kids that might insist that they change their shirt if they accidentally spill juice or water on their shirt. Okay? These kids might also be a picky eater. Okay, now the other side of the coin is the tactile under-responsive. These are the kids who either are very seeking of this input or it takes a lot of input to register with their system. Okay, so these kids might seem to touch everything. They're dragging their hands on the walls, on the hallway. These are the kids at the clothing store that are reaching out to touch all of the different textures of clothes. They're going to touch people. They're going to touch all objects. Okay, these kids might seem to have a very high pain tolerance as well. They might play rough with others and be unaware of their own strength. So they might play too rough with others, but not even be aware that it's rough. Okay. And they also might demonstrate self-injurious behaviors such as biting or pinching or hitting or headbanging. Okay. And this could be a behavioral response to frustration, but it could also be seeking that extra input. Okay. They might not feel themselves biting their finger, for example, until they've actually broken skin. These kids also might not respond to light touch. You might touch them and they might not even seem to notice, or they might not respond to changes in temperature, where you might want to be wearing a long sleeve shirt and they don't even notice that it's chilly out. Okay. They seem to not respond to being hit or cut. And again, these are the kids that it takes extra input just to register with their system. Okay. They might sit or step on things without even seeming to notice it. They might sit on something that's sitting on the couch or in the car seat, and they don't feel it or they don't seem to feel it. Same thing with stepping on things on the floor. Okay. They might not even be aware that they've got a runny nose. They might not feel that on their nose or on their upper lip. They might not recognize that they have a dirty face. Okay. The sensory overseekers also are the ones that, oh my gosh, during messy play, they are going to paint. If they could swim in a pool of shaving cream, they would. They want to paint it all over their bodies with finger paint and other paint. They're going to be with hand sanitizer. They're going to take like extra squirts and rub it all over. And they might then rub it on their face or rub it on their legs. They're seeking all of this stuff. Okay. So let's talk about what we can do to help. All right. So here's some strategies that we can use to help with the kids who are over responsive, the kids who are under responsive. And at the very end, I'm going to show a short video of some ways to modify different activities to give the kids some tactile sensation, but help the kids who are over and help the kids who are under responsive. Okay. But first, let's talk about all subtypes. Okay. This is beneficial for all subtypes. The first thing you want to do as a teacher or as a parent is try to be calm yourself. I know that it's a lot easier said than done, but if your child or your student is having a sensory meltdown because of touching the wrong thing or feeling the wrong thing, and they have a meltdown, it's easy to get into that energy that they're exuding and kind of start getting your behaviors and your energies up. But children internalize our anxieties. So it's really important to try to stay calm yourself. Okay. Another good thing you can do, especially at the beginning of a school year when you don't know your students that well, you can start to keep track of what triggers what might be a trigger for their meltdown, and also some activities or items that helps to calm them. Okay. And another thing that's important is what's called heavy work. Now, I'm not going to get too involved in heavy work on this video. There's another video that you can go to that's all about heavy work. But I just want you to know that heavy work, I'm not talking about having these kids climb a ladder with some roofing shingles. Okay, that's not heavy work that we're talking about. We're talking about just any activity that pushes or pulls against the body and provides their muscles and joints with input. Heavy work activities across the board with any sensory processing problem can help kids feel self-regulated and focused. Okay, and that's why I'm doing a special video just on heavy work. Okay, I've listed some examples, but the best way to look at these examples would be to go to that video specifically for heavy work. Okay, so what can we do to help the kids who are hypersensitive to touch? Okay, again, we're going to embed heavy work activities in daily routine. Again, refer to that video because we're going to talk about how we can have heavy work activities on it in a school day and how we can embed it in their routine. Okay. when the child is having a meltdown, help them seek a calm place and help them learn to go and seek out its calm place or calm activities or calm item when they're overstimulated. Okay. We can remove tags from clothing or I wouldn't, as a teacher, remove tags from clothing. I would suggest that the parents do and have them select less averse clothing. Some of the softer cottons, for example, seamless socks. Depends on what clothing the kids, seem to respond best to. Okay. You can, for preferential positioning in the classroom or in the hallways when you're going from class to class, have them line up at the end of the line, because that way they're not surrounded by two people. They're just surrounded, they just have one, and that reduces the chances that they're going to bump into somebody or being touched by others. Okay. We can modify art activities so that there's less tactile input, but hopefully gradually increase the exposure to more and more input as they tolerate it. Okay. And then we're going to have some examples of that at the end of this training. Okay. So here's some ways you can help the students who are under responsive or seeking. Okay. So again, we want to embed heavy work activities into their daily routine. We have some sensory rich seating options. There are wiggle cushions, such as, it's called a disco sit cushion. It's just a little air cushion they can sit on. It gives them a little wiggle room. Okay. There's also elastic bands that can go around the front of their chair leg, and that gives them that tactile input on their feet. Okay. Providing sensory toys with lots of input, like bumpy balls, koosh balls. Okay. Seeking out activities that involve that intense stimulation. These are the kids that might want to be playing in the dirt. Okay. And so if you're outside at recess time, that's okay. They get that dirt. Okay. They can wash their hands when they come in, but allow them to get that stimulation of touching the mulch or the grass or the dirt. Okay. And just in general, rotary movement, which is spinning, can alert the senses. So the kids who are under responsive to tactile and other senses, spinning does help alert the senses. Okay. So here's the video. This is a way that you can modify a simple classroom art activity to accommodate the kids who are sensory defensive or over responsive, and to the kids who are under responsive and seeking extra sensory input. Let's take finger painting. Okay, the kids who are sensitive to that touch are not going to want to touch the finger paint. So you can accommodate by giving them a sponge brush and having them paint that way. Okay, I have white also. Another way you can accommodate is by giving them a cotton ball. A cotton ball decreases the distance from where their hand is and where the input is. So they might do a cotton ball, which gives them a little closer touch to kind of like work their way up to being able to touch it. Okay. You could give them a smaller cotton ball if they enjoy the activity so much that a little bit of accidental touch isn't going to bother them as much. Okay. So now we want to work towards the kids who are seeking so much input. They will love to finger paint, okay? And they may want to finger paint their whole body. So you kind of have to watch them, okay? But we can add some extra input to make it extra sensory. We can add some glitter to add that texture, okay? Check it out. We can add the glitter. We could add sand. We could add rice. We could add a bunch of things. Here's another activity you can do with your kids in the classroom that gives a lot of good sensory input. It's using shaving cream. Now, some kids are going to love this. These are the kids that are the tactile seekers, okay? So you give them some shaving cream, and you can embed academic concepts into this activity, okay? You can use having them draw, okay, or form letters or shapes. Okay, so you can actually use this sensory medium to embed some tactile or some academic concepts of drawing different shapes, letters, numbers, lines, etc., even faces, making happy and sad faces to work on those emotions. Now, of course, not every kid is going to want to do this. Some kids are going to want to touch it and then they're going to quickly wipe their hands. So they should have the option to be able to wipe their hands. Other kids do not want to touch it at all. So you can give them, kind of like we did extending the reach with the finger paint, a stick to hold on to. They could even hold on to a Q-tip or a paintbrush or any type of stick, so they can still involve themselves with this activity, but extend their reach. And they might have that little accidental touch, which is what we're kind of hoping for the kids that are tactile sensitive, to get a little bit of exposure over time. Okay. There are some kids who don't want to touch it, but they might want to move an animal and make animal prints. So they're, again, engaging with the activity and seeing and smelling the shaving cream without getting it on their fingers. So this is a way to modify for those kids. Other kids might want to move their cars through it and see how the patterns are made. And then that accidental touch, sometimes they get it on their fingers and oops, but they have so much fun with the car that it might not be as tough for them. Okay. Now for the kids that are seeking this input, sometimes the shaving cream is enough, but you could also add little beads or other types of sensory things. You could add glitter. You could add beans and rice, but then of course, then you just have to toss those because they don't stay well. If you added beads, plastic beads, then you could just rinse the beads off and reuse them. Okay, so there's some ways to increase exposure to a sensory medium, but also use the sensory medium to work on academic concepts. So here's another activity we can do for increasing some sensory tactile input. This is, I don't even know what it's called. I think it's called GAC or phloem, but anyways, it's kind of looks like little styrofoam beads and it's kind of in sticky together. I use this a lot. You can have kids roll it out, okay? And when they have these little rolled out places, they can actually make letters, okay? Not as easy as Play-Doh to roll out, but it's got a lot of texture to it, okay? So you can do that. Now there are, of course, gonna be some kids who don't wanna touch it, who don't like the feel, whether it's because of the little tiny pellets or the slightly stickiness to it. So for those kids, I suggest you put some of that in a plastic bag. They can't do as much with it, they can't roll it out, okay? But they can still feel the different textures involved. So that's another good option. Here's some more things, ways to embed some sensory tactile experiences into your classroom. So this is just a sensory bin. This one happens to have little plastic beads. You can make them with rice or beans or popcorn, just keeping in mind that plastic beads are a lot easier to clean, so they will last longer. So this one actually has some things in it. You can do a treasure hunt. Okay, you can have the kids, you can fill it up with plastic beads, and then they have to find the number 8, for example, or everything blue or everything yellow. So that's a way to get them to work on the concepts within the class in a sensory way. Okay, and here's another way that you can work on concepts in the class. You can cut out, this is sandpaper, okay? You can cut out letters, or even glue onto paper and then sprinkle sand of the different letters, and the kids can trace over it with their fingers, okay? Which gives them a nice tactile feel. For the kids who are seeking extra sensory input just in general at their desk or at their table, you can actually put Velcro strips or sandpaper glued to the bottom of their desk, okay? So that they have to feel it on the bottom of their desk or even on the sides of their table or desk to kind of just periodically get that sensory input, okay? So those are a couple ways that we can work on in promoting the tactile sense and modify it a bit up and a bit down for the kids who are oversensitive and undersensitive. Thanks for watching, everybody.